imagining those 19 hijackers with other weapons and other plans, this time armed by Saddam Hussein. Take one vial, one canister, one crate, slipped into this country to bring a day of horror like none we have ever known.
Less than a teaspoon of dry anthrax, a little bit about this amount. UNSCOM estimates that Saddam Hussein could have produced 25,000 liters, and Saddam Hussein has not verifiably accounted for even 1 teaspoonful of this deadly material.
I had questions about, this seems strange, what's happening, why the rush to war? I don't understand. Intelligence doesn't support it. Why would we be so far advanced in our war planning by the summer of 2002? I mean specific war planning, invasion planning. What's really going on here? Why are we doing this? It's obviously not for the reasons that they're hinting at.
It should come as no surprise that the dollar is everything. The US dollar is the world's major currency. It accounts for approximately 2/3 of all the world's exchange reserves. Half the world's exports are done in dollars. All International Monetary Fund loans are made in dollars. And if you want to buy oil on the international market, the currency is the US dollar. But what would happen if some other currency threatened that position? With 12 countries already using it, and a further 15 waiting in the wings to convert to it, the euro is the fastest growing currency in the world. If the euro was to become the new international currency, the US might not take it lying down. I went to find Washington-based William Clark, an author and information analyst who believes that the conspiracy behind the Iraqi war is all about protecting the dollar.
In the early 40s, the State Department did tell the President of the United States that it looks like Middle East has more oil than the United States, and so we need, they call it the greatest strategic prize, I think, in world history.
Before this time, nearly all oil was produced by the US and sold for dollars. But by the 1970s, oil had been discovered around the world, and a cartel of 11 oil producers, OPEC, conceived a plan to sell their own oil in their own currencies. But the US had other ideas.
The United States intervened secretly in 1973 when OPEC was evaluating this proposal to say, please don't do that. And they were talking to Saudi Arabia, the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, and say, why don't you sell these in dollars only? And they were working closely with the British on this. And we will, it's sort of a quid pro quo, we will protect you, we will sell you military arms, we'll keep you in power, as long as you keep selling oil in dollars. Even the CIA didn't know about it at first, neither did Congress. But after the fact, it was a fait accompli, it was done. So ever since then, for the last 31 years, the dollars that OPEC gets flows back to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York.
That's where the problem lies. Since the agreement with OPEC, the Arab states have been controlling their own oil fields, but have still continued to sell their oil for US dollars. And where do the oil producers bank their dollars? America. It's called the petrodollar cycle.
After the petrodollar recycling system was implemented, 70% of Saudi Arabia's entire wealth was in one account in the Federal Reserve of New York. And that implemented a system where we kept the Saudis in power, they got rich, and we had an unlimited credit card.
And that's the dark side of the dollar conspiracy, and how America has been carving up the oil industry for years. It's not only the oil producers who have to sell in dollars. Buyers can only pay for oil in dollars as well. And if you don't have dollars, how do you get them? You exchange your goods and services for them. All America has to do is print them.
Japan wants to buy oil, so they make a Honda. They sell us the Honda. We give them that money, dollar bills. They take those dollar bills and they give them over to OPEC. OPEC gives them a barrel of oil. OPEC takes those dollar bills and they give them back to us in the Federal Reserve. So we print the money. It goes to our trade partners. They take some of that money. Some of that money goes to buy their oil, their monthly oil bill. Saudi Arabia then invests it right back in us. That's why it's called petrodollar recycling.
As long as oil is traded in dollars and the US can print them for nothing, then it has its very own money tree. But what happens when the US cannot print those dollars fast enough to keep up with the huge amounts of imports it needs to survive? America is now importing more goods than it can pay for. So by continuing to print more and more dollars, its debt is reaching a dangerous all-time high. Even with petrodollars, it's still having to borrow from former enemies. Some believe that the once mighty dollar is now under threat. One such man, who cannot be identified, agreed to meet me at a secret address in a downtown New York hotel.
As a public servant, I'm prohibited from engaging in any political affairs, but I wanted to express my opinion about this very important subject. Just in the last year, 2005, the amount of foreign exchange reserves held by China has just exceeded the amount held by Japan. The amount of interest that was owed on previous debts of the United States is approaching $900 billion a year. China this year maybe has purchased roughly $200 billion of that. So if they stop buying, there might not be anybody to replace that $200 billion.
So perhaps it's this dependence on dollars, generated by oil, that was the reason the US went into Iraq. The whole US position in the world relies on the petrodollar. And if that should change, it could be a reason for a conspiracy to go to war.
If we have to play by the normal economic rules, we're going to have a normal-sized military, not a massive global military which is larger than the next 20 nations combined, which is what we have right now. So if the dollar loses its status as a world reserve currency, that is the pillar that underpins American supremacy, then the military pillar, which is the other pillar of American supremacy, will fall away as well.
That supremacy is also reliant on the ordinary man and woman in the street continuing to buy in US dollars.
It's American consumers who have unwittingly sown the seeds for this conspiracy. Americans are among the biggest spenders and the worst savers in the world. Buy now and pay later seems to be their motto. US national debt is now $7.7 trillion, and the entire debt of the whole country is an incredible $43 trillion. The average American now spends a record amount of their money just paying off the interest on all their loans. So if the petrodollar collapses and interest rates rise, the bubble will burst, and then the stage is set for national bankruptcy.
There was a guy once named Saddam Hussein who said, you know, I'm kind of mad the United States bombing me, and Britain too, so I'm going to sell oil in the euros. He came out and said that in the fall of 2000. It's a big secret here in the United States.
With the mighty dollar's position as the world #1 suddenly under threat, did a ripple of fear go through the Bush administration?
From 2001 to the very beginning of the war, Iraq exported about 3.3 billion barrels of oil. We bought 2.5 of those billion. We bought 2/3 of the oil, but we had to pay in euros. We couldn't have the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve cannot print euros. So we have to sell GMs to Europe to get the euros, or whatever we sell to Europe for goods and services in order to get the euros to buy the oil from Iraq. So the petrodollar recycling system began to break down.
So according to this theory, Saddam Hussein signed his own death warrant. President Bush had no choice if he wanted to save his country. He quickly placed Iraq on his list of axis of evil nations. And with invasion plans already in place, the inevitable soon happened.
I think the decision by Saddam Hussein to go for a petro-euro was the last straw. They had to move because the economy was threatened. And this is what you need to look at, the whole aspect of Middle Eastern oil. The economies of Europe, the economies of the United States, and the economy of Britain were threatened by Saddam Hussein's decision.